joke, but I'm for real. I do have the best job in the American Theater. I'm the artistic director here at True Colors Theater Company. On behalf of everybody on staff, I just want to say thank you for coming out here on a rainy Thursday to celebrate our community conversation, The Movement Lives On. I have a couple of opening remarks, but I want to give a big shout out to Arts ATL and Tie Def Media, who are our friends and our sponsors here for the show. And on behalf of the team at Tie Def Studios, I'd like to invite Kamala Garrett to give us some opening remarks.
Hello everyone, it's been an absolute joy partnering with True Colors Theater and Arts ATL. Historically, the best audiobooks have been performed by theater actors. Atlanta's theater community has been ignored for far too long, and Tie Def is here to change that. We are hosting our first ever audiobook speed date event. I know, it sounds funny, but it's awesome. It's going to give you a chance to meet with the producers and the production team, pitch yourselves, and hopefully be a part of the next best audiobook project. If you're interested, please sign up outside at Will Call with Chris, and keep a lookout for an email from Tie Def to secure your time slot. We hope to see you there, and thank you.
So our community conversation series has been a vital part of the work that True Colors do. We believe that we thrive at the intersection of artistic excellence and civic engagement, and nothing embodies that intersection more than our community conversations. Today you're going to have an opportunity to see a couple of previews from our current stage production of Fannie, the life and music of Fannie Lou Hamer, but you're also going to be treated to a dynamic panel of theater makers that have been inspired by the call to bring more intersection to the work that's happening in Atlanta theater. So I know you're gonna have some fun with that. Let me get a couple things out the way. First and foremost, big shout out to Brian Cave, Leighton Paisner. It is always good to have lawyers on your side, and we're really thankful that at True Colors, we have BCLP, who is the season sponsor for our community conversations. I also wanna give, like I mentioned, a big shout out to Arts ATL, but big shout out to the folks here at the Southwest Arts Center. Our friends here at SWAC in the city of South Fulton have really been great to True Colors. We've been here since 2010, I believe, and it's always been an amazing home for us right here in the Cascade Corridor. A little bit about the conversation that you're going to have today is going to be moderated by Kelundra Smith. Kelundra is a dynamic playwright and critic, arts administrator. She's kind of done it all, and that's why she's uniquely prepared to have this conversation. Kelundra has been involved in the Atlanta theater scene from so many different aspects and has a really great insight, and she's going to be joined by some panelists that you're going to have an opportunity to hear their names as well. To my left, we have the dynamic duo from Hands in Motion. Right now, that's Moxie. You also will see Ms. Monique come a little bit. Thank you all very much for making our community conversations accessible. So big shout out to Hands in Motion. All right, y'all, let's get ready for a really dynamic performance, but to get you rooted in the spirit of why we need inclusion, why we have so many people that have fought for us, and why we have to continue to fight, I want to hand it over to Morgan E. and Robin McGee, two of the people that make Fannie, the life and music of Fannie Lou Hamer, currently playing at the True Colors Southwest Arts Center stage until July 10th. Please put your hands together for Robin McGee and Morgan E.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be like to sing in my meetings. Nothing like a song to find your truth in somebody else's story. Scriptures say, where there are 2, 3, or more gathered, the Spirit of the Lord is with them. And speaking of scriptures, my favorite comes from the book of Ephesians. I done put on the full armor of God, so I fear not. Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, they were singing that at the first mass meeting I went to, young and old, student, nonviolent coordinating committee, the SNCC. That's what they called themselves. And here they was saying that segregation be the problem, while white folks saying segregation be the solution. Oh, they were so full of fire, talking to us Mississippi black folks, saying that we had rights. Us! Well, the only right I knew was to work from kin to cank since I was 6 years old, 12 to 14-hour days, scratching out a living. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of day. Oh, Lord, pick a bale of cotton. Oh, Lord, pick a bale of day. But here they was, telling me I had rights, even if I was a sharecropper, and they was gonna help us sharecroppers get them rights. Oh, Lord, no more weeping, no more weeping, no more weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, I was 44 years old, and that was the first time I heard someone say I had a right to vote.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming out to join us on this rainy Thursday in Atlanta. We appreciate you so much and are so excited to be having this awesome conversation. My name is Kelundra Smith, as Jamil said earlier, and I am a playwright, theater critic, and journalist here in Atlanta. I've been covering the scene for about 11 years, and I'm about to introduce you to these brilliant folks to my right, this is an excellent group of artist activists. Like, I have been watching these people work for a long time, so I'm kind of like a little like, oh my God. I'm a little starstruck, I'm not gonna lie. All right, so immediately to my right is Britney Miniweather. She is an actor, writer, and activist. She received a BA in theater from Woolford College. She is a proud co-founder of Blacked, and her original play, Sundays at 4, won Best Play at the Atlanta Black Theater Festival in 2019. You've seen her on stages everywhere. I can't list all of your credits, but she will be in Chicken and Biscuits on this stage next month, right?
That's awesome. Exactly right. Yes, thank you.
And next we have Jim Farmer, who is a theater and film journalist at Arts ATL, as well as the executive director of Out on Film, Atlanta's premier LGBTQ+ theater festival. And under his leadership, Out on Film was named a Grand Marshal in the 2017 Atlanta Pride Parade and received the Beacon Award for community engagement from the Arts ATL Luminary Awards. He also, and I'm gonna plug you on this, just won the Excellence in Theater Coverage Award from the Association of LGBTQ+ Journalists for his article in American Theater Magazine about something we're gonna talk about a little bit tonight, which was about, it was called Immersive Theater That Left Scars Behind the Collapse of Serenbe Playhouse. So, Jim Farmer. And next we have Ami Valles. She has been performing in Atlanta Theater for 18 years and is a mainstay at Atlanta Shakespeare Company. She actually earned her Actors Equity card performing as Viola in Twelfth Night, and if I'm not mistaken, for a long time was one of the only AEA members in Atlanta of Southeast Asian descent, yes, for a long time. So she is also a co-founder of East by Southeast, which is the only arts festival in Atlanta to feature work by and of American artists of Asian descent. So, Ami, thank you so much. And Lillian Gina Quinones is a Puerto Rican and Dominican American performer, educator, and director based in Atlanta, Georgia. She can also sing You Under the Table, but that's not in her bio. And she has appeared in many shows, including On Your Feet and In the Heights, Mary Poppins, Wedding Singer, you name it. And she serves as the theater department chair at School of the Arts of Performing Arts High School in Gwinnett County. That's so right, yes. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So before we jump into the questions part of this conversation, I do want to just lay out a bit of context of how we find ourselves here. So all of us lived through 2020, and so, give it up for yourselves. And so we know that during that year, our nation faced a pandemic, a long overdue racial reckoning, and all sorts of inequities in many, many areas were brought to the surface during that time and have continued to be brought to the surface during that time. And we know that theater does not happen in a vacuum. It is often mirroring to us what is happening in the world. So what's happening in the world was also happening in the theater industry at large, and it was also happening in Atlanta. So leading up to the summer of 2020, there had been a number of things that were happening in Atlanta theater, and I just want to share some stats and facts with you all for just a second. I first want to contextualize that Atlanta is home to about 24 professional theaters. This is not including community theater or semi-professional, but just about 24 professional theaters. An article in the New York Times had come out earlier in 2020 that said that though Atlanta has a population that's 54% Black, only 12% of the plays were by playwrights of color. Now that's not Black playwrights, that's playwrights of color. They had looked at the year before and found that only 22 playwrights were playwrights of color, 1 Asian, 1 Latino, produced all across Atlanta theater, okay? Then I also want to just throw out another set of numbers. There's an organization in New York called the Lilly Awards. They do a study called The Count, and they specifically look at women's representation in theater. Women make up, ladies, this is not going to shock you, 70% of theater audiences on average across the country, including Broadway. And yet in the South, 10% of plays produced are written by women. And then when we talk about our non-binary actors, trans actors, Latinx actors, Asian American Pacific Islander actors, those numbers just get smaller and smaller. So what's happening in the country is also happening in Atlanta. And so some of these brilliant artists who are sitting to my right decided to do something about this, and in their own ways, and I'm gonna let them tell you in a second, they have been advocating for more representation on our stages. So first, I just wanna start off by asking you all, because I'm thinking about Fannie and that awesome musical performance we just had. And there's a famous quote by Fannie Lou Hamer, and it's said in the musical, which is, "Until I am free, none of you are free." And I just want to ask each of you to tell me what that means to you in this moment.
Wow. Hi, everyone. We just had tragedies happen over this weekend in our nation again. Police brutality again, mass shootings again. And it does seem poignant to ask, until I am free, none of you are free. I haven't felt that way this week at all. I haven't felt like the work that we have done has meant much of anything this week. But I'm hopeful as we look back and we reflect, that maybe next week will be a little bit better. That I just wanted to answer that question like that.
I'll say until, we're all treated the same and until we all have the same opportunities, because obviously that's not the way America is right now.
Yeah, there's this saying in the theater, it's a way of casting called colorblind casting, where I hear producers say, well, I'm not looking, at the color of who's coming in. And I find that disingenuous because, as we know from the shootings, from the tragedies that keep happening, that color is very important. So color inclusive, right, is what I'm looking for. And as someone who's in the Asian American community, we have often had conversations about, well, do we advocate separately for our rights? No. During Black Lives Matter and the summer of 2020, we as an artistic group and my fellow advocates at East by Southeast, we decided it's not about us. It's about supporting our fellow actors. It's about amplifying their voices, because when they're free, we're free. So it's not an us or them situation, and I think that's the key, right? When it's not an us or them, when it's all of us, that's when we're free.
Yeah, I feel like as a nation, it feels far. So the theater, for me, I would like it to be a respite. I would love for it to be a place of a soft place to land. I would love to be able to, for us as artists and creators and leaders of color, to be able to take off our armor. Because if we can't do it inside of these walls, then what are we doing here? What are we here for? So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your candor with that. One of the things that we saw after the events of 2020 was that many theaters across Atlanta issued solidarity statements with the Black Lives Matter movement and the Stop AAPI Hate movement. And they also wrote up commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This was largely brought on by a series of racial reckoning town halls that had occurred that summer, as well as some Atlanta theater dinners that occurred not just earlier that year, but also the year before, and kind of water cooler conversations that had been happening in the industry about this issue. And one of the things that struck me about those conversations, because I think this is important to get at, because one of the things that struck me was that it was talked about, the issues of inequity and racism and sexism and homophobia were talked about as an open secret. I remember somebody saying that specifically. And I want to ask you all, how? How is it an open secret?
I would like to speak on that. So, and I believe I am one of the co-founders of BLACT, ATL Inc., Black Leaders Advocating for Cultural Theater. And in 2019, is that right, Gina, that fall, we had that secret town hall? Yes, okay, yes. There was, I guess now it's public, secret town hall. It was held, Kelundra, at the Basement Theater, and issues were brought up about mistreatment and mismanagement of actors of Black and Latinx descent at the Serenbe Playhouse. This is before all of the letters online. This is before the big articles. There were actors and artists who were concerned and wanted to speak out and wanted something to be done, and there were letters sent, and we tried to collectively come together on an agreement. But at the end of the day, Kelundra, what happened was people were not comfortable losing their jobs, and they did not feel like they had the power to speak up. So in my humble opinion, I feel as though it took a stoppage of work for the open secret to become completely open. Because it has been discussed, and there was plans made, but it's hard to move forward if people are afraid of the consequences, which they shouldn't be. But.
Yeah, I agree, the consequences. It's interesting because we weren't even let into the room. We started East by Southeast as a festival. It was supposed to be a one-off festival in 2018 because two actors and a director, myself and another actor and a director, were like, hey, these plays written by women featuring actors of color, featuring actors of Asian descent are not being produced. Why? And we held a series of conversations with producing directors around town, and every single one of them said, well, that's because there's no actors. There's you, Ami, and 2 other people. And I don't sing, so that disqualifies me for like 75% of Atlanta theater. I mean, I sing in the shower, but you know. So I was like, okay, well if we're not given the opportunities, then we're always gonna be green in your eyes. We're always gonna be inexperienced. So what we did was we said, well, we don't believe that. We have talented groups of friends. Let's get them here. Let's show you. And so we created a festival. It's supposed to be one-off. We're all very busy actors. The amount of response we got from Asian American artists was so overwhelming that we had to basically create an LLC so we could keep doing it. And it was that thought, you know, we're not even in the room. It was overt racism. Like, you can't read for this. You're not black or white. And again, that colorblind idea, right? Overt racism versus a secret. There was many years ago, there was a theater in town doing 80 Days Around the World, and there is famously a female actor who plays an Indian princess. I was not asked to read. And I'm like, I know, you don't think I'm a good actor, it's fine, I'm green, it's fine. But you should have at least covered your bases and had the only Indian equity actor come into the room for you, so at least you can give the appearance of not being racist, or at least having an idea of it, right? That was my thought. I'm like, everyone was coming to me and going, are you reading for that? And I'm like, I didn't even know it was happening. So that's how I can believe. You know, it wasn't really a secret. But when you're in the room, like Britney said, it's harder to speak up because you don't want to lose that job. Whereas I've always come across, I've never worked for that theater company, by the way, and I don't really want to. You know, and that's always been my blessing, in that I'm willing to say, I don't want to work for you. I don't like this. So I don't work a lot in Atlanta theater because I have stood up to that. And that's a choice I made. My career was less important to me than standing up for those things.
I've sort of, I guess, unofficially had the Brian Cloud's Celebrity Playhouse beat the last year or so. And let me just say, for Arts ATL, the stories I write are very, general. For Georgia Voice and Southern Voice, there's a gay angle. So I covered Celebrity Playhouse from the beginning. And I always gave Celebrity Playhouse press. I always promoted their shows. And I look back now, and it kind of makes me sick, because I really did not know all that was going on. It was really when I started covering it from all that had gone on that I really discovered this. And so many people had stories. Everybody had a story, and then they had 3 referrals. You have to talk to this person. And I talked to all these people, and they told me these stories that just made me sick. And it just went on and on. And one of the questions I had for them is like, everybody seems to know about this. This isn't a secret. Everybody seems to know about this and talk about it. Why didn't anybody say anything? And so many people said, they threatened us. They said that we know people, if you say anything, you'll never work in this town again. I heard that so many times. It was just the threat of, it being a small community. If you say anything, you're toast, you'll never work again. And that just, I don't know. I heard that so many times as I was writing about Celebrity Playhouse the last year.
Well, and the thing that has struck me, though, is that it wasn't just Serenbe. Every single theater was indicted for something, it seems. And that's how we ended up getting these solidarity statements and these publicity statements that came out in 2020. And if y'all indulge me, I want to quote myself for a minute. Because I wrote an essay for Arts ATL back in the summer of 2020 called Atlanta Theater, I Need Your Imagination. And I know what my opinion is on those statements, and so I'm going to read it, but then I want to flip it to y'all. So here's what I wrote back then. I can count the number of artistic directors I've heard say that they're afraid their audiences will abandon them if they do more than 1 or 2 plays featuring artists of color in their seasons. And then I go on to say, those same artistic directors have issued PR statements in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. I just wonder when Black lives will matter on their stages. The issue with these well-meaning publicity statements is that even the language used refers to racism and the Black community as something separate and aside from them. So I want to ask you all, now that, theater was down, as you mentioned, and theater is coming back, live in-person theater, I should say, because we had digital theater, but live in-person theater is coming back. And before we go to the next musical performance, I just want to ask, have you all seen, and we may have to pick up our answers on the other side of this, have you all seen a difference working this season?
Should we have the musical performance first?
Or vodka first?
Yes. Yes, we have seen a difference. No, it's not enough.
And in some cases, we haven't seen a difference at all. So we're not going to go down the list, but just we're not blind and we are paying attention. The artistic community is paying attention. We see the cast announcements. We see the season announcements. We see the new people that are staffed in your offices. We see all of it. And we're paying attention, and in some cases, we're talking to each other about it, and in many cases, like my own, I'm not talking about it no more. I'm just like, oh, there's that again, right? And in some cases, though, we have seen the shift. We have seen the seasons that make you go, ooh, that's different. That's a nice selection of playwrights of color, of stories that reflect the world that we live in, that reflect the city that we live in. But that, I feel, Kelundra, that those cases are few and far between right now. And that for the most part, theaters are still in survival mode. And they're producing what is safe, what they know is going to continue to sell tickets to the patrons that they had before the pandemic. And there's not, to them, we're a risk. And they're not, and what I see when I see the same old, is you're not willing. First of all, you see me as a risk to begin with. And then second of all, you're not willing to take that risk. And in not willing to take that risk, you're automatically closing the door. And I think that Britney, I think that it is important for us to be willing for us to be willing not to work in those places until they're willing to take that risk.
I think we have like 20 seconds. Oh no, we have 0 seconds. Okay, so we'll pick up after this next musical performance.
Freedom Summer, 1964. That's when we in SNCC leadership recruited mostly white college students, hundreds of them from all over the country, to come to Mississippi and help shine a spotlight on all the violence that was happening. Oh, they were so full of hope, like the young always are. I can still hear their sweet voices. Yeah, got my hand on the gospel plow. Won't take nothing for my journey now. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. the supervisors, and a lot of us couldn't read or write that good. But them college students, they held literacy and civic classes and taught all the kids, and adults too, all about Negro history. Ain't that something? White folks teaching us about our own selves. Oh, but there were some brave young people, a beautiful thing to see. And them joining us showed America that blacks and whites, Jews and Christians, the poor and the privileged can work together well. Blacks and whites together we stand, unbreakable hand in hand. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Hold on, hold on, keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. And just when you think your heart can't break much more, they killed them 3 boys, Andy Goodman, James Chaney, and Mickey Sherman. I knew all 3, especially James and Mickey. See, Mickey told me that the KKK was out to get him. See, they didn't hate Mickey just because he was white helping the coloreds, but he was also Jewish. That's the thing about hate. It don't make no friends with no color or no religion. I could never teach my children to hate nobody. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on.
I saw this show on opening night, and being on stage with it, I'm like, okay. Woo. So before that awesome number from Fannie, I had asked the question, since those solidarity statements and commitments had been issued, had you seen a difference? What differences had you seen? And Jim, we'll start with you on this side to respond to that question.
Before COVID, I'd probably see at least 2 shows a week. After COVID, I've been very wary. Last season, I saw 4 shows all year. This year, I'm gradually getting into it. I've seen some gradual changes. I mean, very subtle, nothing really substantial. I mean, the same theaters that I admired for being, inclusive, diverse, seem to be the ones that are taking more initiative. Like for all the positives, I see some negatives. A couple of days ago, I got a press release from a theater company, and I went down, and this is a theater that, made a statement. And they basically have 1 black show in their season, and I guess they're patting themselves on the back for having their black show this season. Was that working? Is this better? Sorry about that. I don't know if I should say this or not, but I saw a big show last month that, made a big deal about diversity and having, diverse cast, diverse crew. And I saw it and I was very troubled by it because although it also had a very, very insulting, problematic gay character. And it felt like there was no one in this entire show that was gay that could have said, "Are you kidding me? Look at this, this is insulting." I don't know a single gay person who saw that show and that character who wasn't insulted. So I don't know. For me, it's like, yeah, there's progress, but then we step back.
I agree. The idea that we saw these statements, and they had to do it for PR reasons. You have to say, "Oh yeah, I'm committed." I mean, you have to, right? That's just how it works. You just have to do it because otherwise, again, we were watching and saying, "Oh, you didn't do it." And it was during COVID when there were no theater shows being produced, so it's easy to say we're going to make a difference. And we did see some real positive changes. Almost everyone hired a community development person. But what I'm noticing is those people aren't in the room when the art is being made.
Speak on it.
Oh, yeah, and they are not the ones saying, "Hey, this is problematic. The way you're doing this isn't right." I've heard some side conversations where a theater producer was like, oh, this was the concept. And it was very like, yes, we're going to have, most of the leads are going to be black, and then this person's going to be white. And it's like, but the relationship between them, if you make this person black and white, you do realize there's overtones of slavery in that. And it was like, oh, what? But it wasn't the community development person who's had any input in that. It wasn't the EDI committee, which unfortunately is also made up of white leadership in that how is that diversity? You're still the people making the decisions are not diverse. At the end of the day, they're not diverse. So there's only so much change that can happen. However, like the song says, we're keeping our eye on the prize, and I've always given these theaters, I'm gonna give you 2-3 years to make it happen. Things don't happen overnight. Change doesn't happen overnight. There's an Indian saying that says, when you wake up, that's when your day begins. And really what it means is, I'm woke, right? I woke up today, I realized what I did yesterday was wrong, so I'm not gonna do it again. But that still takes some time. Some people wake up a little bit slower than others. And I feel like the more conversations like we have like this, where we no longer keep it a secret, is how we call that to account.
Can I just respond to one thing that Ami said? You made a great point about the community outreach. Is that the title that you gave at all these different theaters? I've seen more black directors, more black designers, so I've seen improvements there. And I've seen more black and other people of color come into those community director outreach program positions that are in 2022 no longer in those positions. And I would just like us to look at the staffing of these theaters and see why women of color, black women, cannot keep these jobs in these institutions that release these statements.
They can't keep us.
Speak on it.
Because if you don't change the water, then you can throw all the things you want inside the water. You're still going to get the same result. So structurally, systematically, at a deep institutional level, these organizations have to be willing to completely deconstruct and rebuild. And if that doesn't happen, the revolving door will still be there, because you're gonna have situations where you're gonna have onlys. I'm the only something in a room, and now I'm tired and I'm leaving because I was the only one here. And I woke up today and I decided, you don't get to burn me out like this anymore, right? So they have to change the water. Or we're just going to be it's going to be 2032 and we're going to still be having this conversation.
Just to add on that a little bit, specifically, we did a staged reading at the Alliance, part of their Riser Lab, which was great. We were the only Asian American live performance theatrical event happening in town in the month of May, which is Asian American Pacific Islander Awareness. Not one artistic director, not one community development person that we reached out to that we know, several of my artistic creative staff, we know them personally, we go out to dinner with them, we're friends with them, not one of them came to see the show. And yet we sold out. We sold out. Because we knew our Asian American community was gonna come out. And they did, and it was a very diverse audience, surprisingly, but what we heard was, well, it's a free reading, you're gonna have attrition, maybe you'll get 50%. And we were like, are you sure? And we sold out, to the point where it was like, even if artistic directors had called up and said, we wanna come in, you couldn't get in. And, which gives lie to that idea that we're gonna lose, as you said, we're gonna lose audience, or that we're a risk. The risk is changing their mind, not necessarily the audience that shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, even from my own experience, whenever I have gone to things for East by Southeast or by Latinas Who Lead, you can't get in. You better get your ticket ahead of time. Like it's wall to wall. So you all are giving a great segue into my next question, which is, one of Fannie Lou Hamer's legacies was that she created a co-op for Black farmers and sharecroppers in Mississippi. And at their peak, they employed almost 1,000 people because her whole thing was, if I can't change this system, at least I can make sure that my community can eat. So, I want you all to talk each a little bit about, how have you created your own farms, so to speak, over the past couple of years? And what are you doing? This is shameless plug time.
Well, I did just plug a little bit about East by Southeast doing that. We're not necessarily producers, but what we like to do is connect producers to the artists. However, like I said, that turned out, it was supposed to be a one-time thing because we thought we'll pass the reins on to somebody else. And what we found is now we're the farm. We're the link, where the producers are coming to us and saying, hey, do you have a list of actors? Do you have a list of designers that are Asian American or Manasa, which is Middle Eastern, North African, South Asian? Do you have these people? And we always caveat that with, do you have anyone in the creative team who is of one of these ethnicities? Because there's not a lot of trust. So you might trust us, and we might trust you, but there's not a lot of trust amongst these actors or creatives with you, so you have to kind of convince us. So I feel like we're tilling that soil of we're keeping the pests out of the garden. At least we're trying to. So I feel like that East by Southeast is definitely the way that we ended up having to create that farm for these artists.
Very similar at Black as far as artistic directors and theaters reaching out for resources and helping other Black artists in town get jobs. That means a lot to us. And one other thing that we do is community outreach, Kelundra, and we work with Kimberly Elementary School and Continental Colony for the past 2 years, and we do a toy drive and give back to those families in need. So we'll probably be hitting up your emails for those donations, so thank you in advance.
Well, my work extends outside of professional theater into education. And somewhere in the midst of that heavy pandemic period, Jade Lambert-Smith, who's in the audience, and myself started having several conversations about where we are in this world of theater and education, and where kind of our worlds intersect, and what we want to, what type of young people we want to foster, and how we want them to walk out into the world and walk into these institutions. Right? And walk into the collegiate institutions that they're going to go to. And so to that end, we've done a ton of work over the last almost 2 years, speaking, presenting, workshopping, developing, hiding away, talking, doing all those things, but primarily talking and presenting to educators on creating valiant spaces for young people to learn how to use their voice and learn how to and learn how valuable they are early, so that they're not having to have these conversations. A lady doesn't say her age, but I'm in my early 40s, and there's so many things that I'm still unlearning about my value and about my body in this world and what it brings. And so it's just, so we've done a whole ton of work around just talking to other educators and going into school systems. We've worked with Fulton County and Atlanta Public Schools and Gwinnett County, and we've also worked with the International Theater Festival and Georgia Thespians, and you name it. We've been running our mouth. Whoever will listen, we are talking to them. and just kind of laying the groundwork, because we want our students to, if the theaters aren't going to change themselves now, we want the people that are coming up, the artists, the creators, the leaders that are coming up now, to force the system to have to change. So.
I love that you said that, because for years, so many of us have heard that, the donors are the problem, the audience is the problem, the board is the problem. And it's like, as you all have said, it's not just any one element, it's all of those things together. And so I want to hear from you all before we turn over to Q&A with the audience. What does your ideal Atlanta theater look like?
I think a theater that gives artists equal opportunities, that is willing to take chances, that looks in the mirror and recognizes who they are, who they want to be, who they can be, and just really, and just really is aware. Does that make sense? Sometimes people may not be aware. Sometimes, but I think a lot of theaters in town that are trying to sincerely make an effort, know what it is that they're trying to do and why it's important. Some of the theaters have no idea why it's important. As you said, they just simply put out a PR statement, pat themselves on the back. They do a black plate. They're like, "Oh, we're here," and you're not. You're missing the point completely. It's important for theaters to give artists equal opportunities, to give them an environment where they feel comfortable and free, can be who they are, and I guess that's it.
Can I ask a real quick follow-up before everybody weighs in? Because I was thinking about what you said about that problematic character portrayal at that large musical that we all saw and hope doesn't get to Broadway. I'm curious, because you spend so much time, particularly in the LGBTQ plus community, doing intersectional advocacy, what does the consulting or what have you look like for that process to get that character to be fuller?
I don't know. When I saw that character, I imagine if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. But the point of replacing of that character was that it was based on a movie, and the original character was an 80s cliche. So they were going to redo the character, make the character more modern. And it was just as retro as the other characters. I don't know. There was obviously some collapse, because I don't know who in their right mind would see that character who's gay and think this is progress. So I don't know. I have no idea. I would love to find out if anyone from that production was actually gay. If so, why they didn't say something. Because, as I said, there was so much about that show that I appreciated. But that was one thing that stood out to me, really kind of insulted me.
Thank you for that. So turning it to the other three, does anybody want to weigh in? What does your ideal Atlanta theater look like?
I had to go first, too.
No, sorry, I set that up. One of the things that I would like to see out of Atlanta theater is it not to reflect how our current America is. That system needs to be broken down completely, right? Clearly, right? We're living through that. So to Lily and Gina's point, going to our artist space should be a respite. Should be like, whew, glad to be home, right? But it doesn't feel like that, because so many of those American ideals trickle down into every industry, including ours. So I would like an industry that in Atlanta that completely pushes back on that all the time. To your point about that show, why that show? If there's any problematic character, why not another show? Y'all got the money. Y'all got the time. Y'all have the resources. Why not another show? So that's what I would like to see. And then one other thing I would like to see is if there is a play that is Black, heavy cast, Latinx, Asian Pacific Islander, let that whole team be of those backgrounds, and then you take your foot off the gas and let them do it, you know, and allow them to learn and grow. Because often it feels like, okay, this is your one shot. Don't mess it up. It better sell. Oh, can't do that again. So that would be my ideal Atlanta theater.
Agreed. Agreed. And there shouldn't, like, a show that is, we're doing a classic, and that classic, because the word is classic, all the people on stage are white, and the creative team is white. So that should be a not thing. A not thing. Got my grammar right. But also across the board, you know, the idea that we need our own show, I like them. Don't get me wrong. I like a show that is about my story and my body and my people and my culture. I do need that. But if that's the only time that I'm gonna get an email, and on top of that, you don't even know what kind of Latina I am. So you're gonna call me for the Honduran role, for the Salvadorian role, for the Mexican role, for all the roles, because you don't know anybody else. And my last name is Quinones. So I want theaters to do the work, right? To do the legwork, and also have the staffing so that they can create a system of checks and balances for themselves. I think something we talk about, Jade and I talk about to teachers, is decentering leadership, especially when you are when you're a white teacher in a school or in a room that has a lot of different ethnicities represented. Voices matter, and if you're the one that gets to say, I decide what the last word is, it's always going to be filtered through your own perspective, through your own biases, right? So there has to be a system of checks and balances. The table has to look like this. And it has to look like this for, I don't know, The Sound of Music. And it has to look like this for all of it. Not just my show or your show or your show, right? Because if the only time that you write the email to the Black director or to the South Asian director is when you're going to do a piece that's written by a playwright from that same ethnicity, then you still don't get the point.
Hear, hear. I'll keep this short. My theater, ideal theater, is one that pays a living wage to everybody. I want to make money doing this. Also, Lily and Gina, I'll be on that panel where we can hire ourselves out as the consulting group for all theaters in town. I like that. I'd be on this one. Yeah, hire us to do that. But really, I think, and I don't want theater to all look the same. Like, I think what's appropriate for True Colors is not going to be the same thing that's appropriate for Horizon. You know, every theater needs to have their own voice and their own creative voice. But within that, there should be, it's like you said, it shouldn't be that the only time we're called is when there's some playwright of that. Because you don't know what kind of Asian I am. You know, you don't know my experience. And if I'm only appropriate to play a 5'1" cisgendered Indian American, I got nothing. You know, I'm never gonna work in this town again. So I think that again, going back to when it's not us, them, this play is your play, it's our play and our story. an American story is a diverse story, and I want to see that.
Yes.
I'm not sure who all here remembers Chris Coleman. He used to work at Exit Express. Chris Coleman was a great guy. He eventually left for another theater, I think in Portland. But he always told me, it's like, when I'm planning my season, I can have 4 shows that do really well, get great reviews, have one size. But if I have one show that doesn't perform like it should, we're in trouble. And that's scary to me. And so many theater administrators tell me that same thing. But I just look at it from other sides. It's like, that's unfortunate, but it also feels like, I don't know, it sort of feels like, I wish theaters were able to do more outreach and community work so that, it doesn't feel like, there's one show in the season that sort of stands out. I want to feel like, and I think that, I don't know, as someone who sees a lot of theater, I'm not trapped into what I want to see. I love seeing new things. And I think most theater people are like that. You want to meet new people and see new worlds and see more plays. I just wish theaters had more belief in their audiences, that they could do a show that may be a little bit different than anything else and have people come and maybe put in a little bit of extra work and just do more of those shows throughout the season so that one show doesn't feel like it's sticking out to sore thumb.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, y'all, I'm looking at you. Now's the time. These brilliant people are ready to take your questions. We have microphones down front, so if you want to come down to the mics and ask your questions, they are open for you. And we should be able to take a few questions before the final musical performance. So, yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Alila, pronouns she, her. And I am a part of the theater, the opera community in Atlanta. And have worked with Brian Cloudis and, was strategically placed in that whole situation. But as has been pointed out, right, 2020, you've got the great pause, you've got the great reckoning, and you've got great solidarity. Those things came together to force statements, to force, some action, even those who did it begrudgingly. Now, we outside, and there are some who are just really itching to go back to sleep. And we know that power will not cede itself, right? So how do we maintain the solidarity now that people are starting to get work again, right? Because it was pointed out that before the reckoning, everybody knew, but everybody was also afraid to say because they didn't want to not work. So now that we've all experienced not working, we know how to do that if need be. How do we keep people plugged in, energized, willing to require systemic change rather than putting a bunch of Black people on a flyer or on a program and saying, we've changed, even though the turnover is still the same?
Right, absolutely. Great question. I'll just say, and then I'll turn it over to these folks. One of the things that I think that every industry should do is talk about money. So I do quite a bit of my work as a journalist, and one of the things that has been tremendously helpful over the past 2 years is we get on phone calls and it's like, well, how much does so-and-so pay you? So that's just my little tidbit, but.
Well, I mean, Lily and Gina, you were talking about the next generation. Giving them the courage and the tools to demand that change is definitely, yes. Transparency, money, definitely asking, is it? I often, also as an artist, we have to make choices, right? Is this artistically fulfilling, emotionally fulfilling, financially fulfilling? And I think we can all agree as working artists that Atlanta is not financially fulfilling if you're working. So it comes down to, is this artistically, emotionally? And we have permission now to say, no, this isn't. And just to keep reminding each other, you don't have to do this. You don't have to take the job. And I remind people all the time, you don't have to take the job. You don't. If it's gonna hurt your soul, it's definitely not going to help your bank account, so don't do it, right?
Go ahead. I think I tend to get easily overwhelmed and exhausted. Well, because I work with young people. Did I say that? So I'm already on like in the red all the time. So I, for myself, have had to break this down to like the cellular level. I have had to chunk it down to very, very small pieces. And there are questions that I ask before I take a contract. And one thing that I feel that is important, I don't publicize it, but I always negotiate a contract. Always, even if it's a little bit, just always negotiate it, right? And then I ask, before I sign this, how many actors of color are going to be in this cast? Am I going to be the only one? And if there's a specific thing going on, I always ask that question also. So there are like little questions that I ask and permissions that I give myself. I give myself permission to walk away from something. I don't have to stay there. I really don't. If I feel like you're beating down on my soul for any reason, I'm not getting paid enough. The conditions are not what they need to be, and it doesn't align with. I got to put my money where my mouth is. And I can't sit on a project and stay with a project if it doesn't align with who I am at my core. So I just give myself permission to just walk away if I need to.
Absolutely. And I will let you all, connect after, but I do want to have the chance to get to this next question. So.
Hello. Hi, my name is Trayvon Fambro, and my pronouns are he and him. I work for the New Georgia Project. We're a voting rights and civic engagement organization. We're a voting rights and civic engagement organization, and I came. Tonight was advertised at our job, and I was a theater kid growing up, and this is my beautiful partner, Tavija. And for so long, the plan, I'll be at Morehouse College in the fall, and the plan was I'll be a voting rights lawyer. I'm gonna go to law school, and I'll be a voting rights lawyer. But I have the strong suspicion and feeling and spiritual sense, and my partner has been saying it's more than that. I see more for you. And I feel like that gives me the power to affect change, and I need that power, but what words of encouragement or wisdom would you have? Because I think I'm going to look back on tonight and say, law school is not going to happen. And what words of encouragement or wisdom would you give to young Black creatives who want to start a theater company? So we are not just the artistic director, or we have that power. So the same power I'm looking for as a voting rights lawyer, I can connect to my artistic side, and I can live out my dream and be that theater company that is giving those opportunities and doing what, fulfilling the dreams that you guys envision, that you've talked about tonight.
Start?
Do it. If not you, then who? You know what I mean? And if you go on this track and learn all these things, and learn all these voting rights things, why is that not a play? Why is that not the premiere of your theater company? You can put all of your aspirations and all of your passions into your art, and then you can teach someone even more that they didn't know. I got chills listening to you. Just do it. It's Atlanta. You got it.
The intersection between justice, social justice, and art, it's undeniable. You have the power to affect change and to affect the way people see things, because if you put it on the stage, they see it, they can believe it, they can imagine it, it can happen. My advice is, again, just do it, but also I would love to see a generation that doesn't rely on the idea that theater is charity. You know, in your work as a voting rights activist, I would love to see more funding given to the arts so that we're not relying on individual donors who might have their own bias and prejudices and say, I'm only going to sponsor this big, terrible musical because, you know, I loved it when I was a kid and I want to see it as an adult and I have millions of dollars to give you. That would allow for so much freedom of expression when we're not beholden to that dollar, right? When we're not beholden to this idea that theater is charity and we shouldn't get paid. And so I see an intersection there. And again, yeah, so many stories that you have the power to tell.
And practically ask for a space. Ask for a space. I'm a young artist. I'm trying to come up. I have this project. I like to put it out. Reach out to people. Ask for the space. It's okay. Ask Morehouse for the yard. Ask True Colors, for the office space. You know, ask for it and see if people will allow you, you know, one night only, my show. You can do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I want to get to this gentleman who's been, do you have a question or were you supporting? Oh, okay. Come on down. All right.
For me, it was, I just wanted to thank you guys because I feel like what you guys are doing is so powerful and so needed. I think the change is going to slowly but surely happen. I think what you spoke about, kind of putting that in, nourishing the younger crowd, I think we're going to start seeing that as the years go on. And I'm super excited for that. And I think you guys are just freaking amazing. Like, everything tonight was just so powerful. And I think more conversation needs to happen like this. Not only behind the scenes, but in spaces like this where there's multiple people being able to take in the information, and also representation is so needed and it matters and it's powerful, and I think all across the board is powerful and it's so needed, and I thank you guys so much. Wow.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
This young lady touched on it, the issue that I'm about to ask someone. I grew up in Detroit, and I graduated from high school in 1963. There was an organization called the Grinnell Brothers. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Large organization which brought the soul musical instruments. They supplied musical instruments to virtually all of the high schools in Detroit, renting or leasing or whatever. And because of that, there are a lot of people in Detroit who played instruments, not just because they did it through school, but because they went to Grinnell Brothers and took lessons like me. I took trumpet. I was abysmal, so I stopped. But one of the questions I have for you is there a possibility of having an overreaching group, which is an umbrella, which is helping you bring in young kids all over the place? And people think of Motown as being the reason for Detroit music being as it was. Motown was planted, with seeds planted in already fertile ground. So it was already there. They just helped accentuate it. Is there anything like a Grinnell Brothers which could help you do what you want to do? And they used to have programs in a venue, Detroit Art Museum, about a quarter of the size of this. We get in for $1. I saw every Motown act for less than $1. And that kind of thing would help the overall picture.
Absolutely, yes, sir. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because arts education is absolutely crucial. That's what you're talking about. I mean, we hear the statistics all the time that in communities where there are strong arts programs, the schools have less violence, the communities have less violence. I mean, that tie has been made by the National Endowment for the Arts for years. And so I'd love to hear you all talk about the different programs you're involved in and speak to that educational component.
I love that you said that. One of the biggest toys that we try to purchase for our toy drive are instruments for those students. And so I wish that they were better quality instruments. And that's a part of getting funding and reaching even further. So thank you for saying that. And we'll work on even more. Thank you. That's what I took from what he said.
Anybody else? You have anything to say about education? Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
I can speak to his question
Okay,
if you
go
want
ahead.
me to.
Sure.
So no, there's not. There is for music. There's not for theater because theater's like 3 rungs down the totem pole. So the Atlanta Music Project, which comes out of the the idea of the thing from Venezuela, happens here. But theater advocacy is something we're working on, but because theater doesn't have the voice and it gets the money, everything's a totem pole. So in Georgia, it starts with athletics first, before academics. So athletics, then academics, then the arts, and the arts is broken down into rungs. So if you want something to change, we have to go to Congress. That's the answer to that question. We can talk more about what that looks like if you want to after this. I would love to talk to you. I have comments because that's how I do when I'm radical. Jim, I want you to know when I left that show, I called Gina on the phone and said, what in the hell just happened? No, and so I'm saying that, I did, literally, in the car. So I'm saying that to say it should not be up to an LGBTQ person to say that this was out of order. Everybody who saw that show said, what in the heck was that role and
Everybody
why?
who read that show.
Yes, that too. So I think it's not right to only require the person who identifies as we're all accountable to bad characters and to bad representation. And if we don't do that, then we're just not good American citizens. On another note, this community development thing, because I had this role at the Alliance way back when, before the recession when everybody got fired, in 2009, 2009, that role is uninhabitable. Let's explain why.
I agree.
I'm explaining to everybody why. This is a position. If it's community development, that means your position is after hours. So you're required to be there from 9 to 5, then you're required to go after 5 to go into the community to find the people in the weekend. So it's really a 3-person full-time job that they generally ask one person to do. That's why those people don't keep that role. And people rarely hire a team to do the role. They hire one person. It's often someone who's maternal and can speak to people. And if they get burnt out because whoever's the powers that be don't take some money out of their salary to pay that person for the time, because that's what has to happen. So they're paid between $30,000 and $50,000, which means they have to drive from the suburbs of Georgia, which means they're getting all of the things. It's just not financially viable, which answers your question about Atlanta theater. We do not need an Atlanta theater. Theater is not about one thing. We need the money to be diversified. We need the money to be spread out, because if you have one theater trying to answer everybody's questions, we're not doing what theater does. Theater speaks to micro communities. The people are supposed to go to theater to find their different homes and in my different communities. So we need the money to be diversified, and to that end, theaters we're a little vain and we're going to the same people. We've got to get out of this whole idea of who we ask for. We got to crowdfund, we got to call the stars and say, hey, so I'm doing this really great thing. And when you find people who are doing radically different things, it's because they went and got the money somewhere where no one's been getting it for the last 20 years.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So many salient points there. I appreciate that. Yes. Thank you. And that financial point is so important. I will just add a quick thing where a friend of mine who, she's at Baltimore Center Stage now, but she and I co-produce things independently sometimes. And in the fall of 2020, we produced a digital theater program. And we were able to get a grant from Fulton County, but the rest of our funding came from women of color restaurant owners who said to us, no one ever asked us. And so we were able to we had a diverse group. We had a Black woman, we had 2 Asian women, and we had a Latina who funded our project. So that is absolutely true. Everybody's going to the same wells for water, and there's a whole lot more water than what people are going toward. Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Hello, how are you all doing?
Good,
All right,
thank
so
you so
my name
much.
is Shoshana Miller, and I actually just recently finished writing a play. It's actually going to be debuting at Synchronicity Theater. And
Congratulations,
on July 22nd and 23rd. So, but my question is, when I wrote
What's the
this
name
one,
of it? It's your time.
it's titled Family Dynamics. and
Okay,
it's
Family
actually-
Dynamics,
yeah,
Synchronicity
and
Theater,
it's-
July 22nd. We got it.
Yeah, so, but my question is, like, when I was writing the play, I was looking for people like you all, and I was stuck. I had no idea where to go, what I was doing. Like, how can a person who's just starting out, like, find that information? And about funding, I've applied for some grants and never heard anything from anybody. Like, where would I start? Where would a person like me begin and look for help from people like you all?
Please friend me, Britney Miniweather McElveen on Facebook, and I will add you to Black Atlanta Inc. We have postings daily about jobs, about grants, about opportunities for Black artists in Atlanta and in the Southeast. And you can even write in there, hey guys, I'm looking for this. Who would like to participate? And people will tag folks, they will talk, and you'll have a list of people. Please, Britney Miniweather McElveen. It's long, but I'm the only one.
And also Atlanta Artist Relief Fund is often posting resources online for theater artists in particular. That's another good resource, Atlanta Artist Relief Fund. Okay, come on down.
And I am a producer in Atlanta. And I wanted to know, when you guys are creating content and producing, how do you guys battle putting out content that feels good to the soul, but also putting out content that so many people are going to be interested in tuning into? How do you guys deal with that? How do you guys, what's your guys' thoughts on that?
Okay, so the great question. Jim, if you're willing, I'd love for you to take that question. And we've got 5 minutes left, so if it's okay with you all, we'll have Jim respond and then take this last question before we do our last musical number. Is that cool? Okay, awesome.
So in my non-theater life, I coordinate Out on Film, which is the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival here in town. And programming is hard because I love documentaries. I love foreign films. I love small films. They aren't necessarily moneymakers. So when I'm programming my film festival, I just have to really, my bread and butter is going to be the films I love, that I gravitate to, those documentaries, those acclaimed films from Sundance that will not have mass appeal. I just have to try to balance it, I have to look and see, what people want to see versus, the great films I want to. And I probably, as a programmer, I probably have to have 5, 6, 7, butt fillers. Films are going to be mass appeal with names in it, somebody recognizable. And when I can do that, and when I can have those films do well, if I can breathe, that gives me the freedom to program the little small films that 14 people will see. And I'm okay with it. And, no one gets into independent film to make money. If we break even, we make a little bit of money, we're happy. We're not in this to make tons of money. I'm an artist. That's not who I am. I probably speak for everybody here. So it's just a balance of the films you have to program on a Friday, Saturday to pay rent and to go to next year. And when you can do that, then you can program the stuff that really makes you happy, that excites you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we got one more question. We got 2 more minutes, so come on.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Hayes. I'm a recent graduate of Michigan State University, where I got my BA. I graduated in 2021 of December. I just wanted to
Congratulations.
I just really wanted to come up here and thank you all, first and foremost, because as I said, Michigan State is a PWI, so we don't get these spaces of radical people of color having these spaces telling us, like, hey, you can just walk out of a room. We pay for education here, so it's like we gotta stick it out. We have to sit there and just take the punches, but it's so nice to be here in this space in the South, in Atlanta, where people of color are, and be able to just feel like, I feel so empowered right now, and I just wanna thank you all from the bottom of my heart.
Yes. Thank you. Absolutely. We're all about, one of the things that's very important to me when we have these types of conversations is that we leave people not feeling defeated. And we want people to feel hopeful, we want people to feel energized, and we want people to feel empowered to go do what it is you're called to do, whatever that may be. So am I getting the sign? Okay, I've got 2 minutes. I got an extension, I know. Do we have any more questions, or do any of you have it? Okay, go ahead.
No, it's not a question.
Okay.
Because I'm already up here.
I wasn't asking you.
It's 2 things. No, and I was thinking the same thing that you're thinking, because I have a tendency to gripe a lot. I do. But there is some really good stuff happening in Atlanta, which is why we're still here, right? We're still here. We haven't packed our bags and left, because we still have some hope, and our hope is attached to some evidence. So there is some stuff that is happening here. There are productions, there are staffing changes, there are new works. There are new works that are being read, and there are things. A lot of the really great things are the things that are happening in little corners, like Jade said, in micro communities. So, get yourself connected to the small stuff, because I think that's where we recharge and we remember why, and that's my second point, is why on earth do I still do this? I ask myself this question on a regular basis, and I really just think it's because this place is a place where I can be reminded how to be a human. That's it. It's at the end of the day. That's it.
30 seconds.
I'm gonna make y'all, we're at 0? Okay, we're at 0. So on the other side, we may be able to come back around. All right, so I think we've got one last musical performance from the musical Fannie coming on through.
Oh yeah. Don't you let nobody turn you around, turn you around, turn you around. Don't you let nobody turn you around. You got to keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom way. Don't you let no Jim Crow turn you around, turn you around, turn you around. Don't you let no Jim Crow turn you around. You got to keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom way. Don't you let no hatred turn you around, turn you around. Don't you let no hatred turn you around. You got to keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom way. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. That was awesome. Okay, so we have time for a couple more comments, and then we're going to conclude.
So I wanted to kind of piggyback off what you were saying about why we're here. We're here because Atlanta is change and can change, and the theater community is very small. So those of you starting out, it is small. We want to help. Social media is a great way to find us. And we're not that hard to find. We're really not that hard. But it is small enough that we can still affect some change. And, when we were talking about Brian Cloudis and the threats of you won't work in this town, I immediately went, well, actually, it is a small community and no one will work for you. Because we do talk, right? But we have to keep talking. I've left town. I know so many actors who have left town, who have gone to LA or New York, these bigger markets, and they come running back because the community is not there. It's a small community. And even though today, I'd met some of my panelists here, but we know each other peripherally. And it's nice to finally meet you in person because I've heard you around, I've seen you around, and that's how small this community is. Even as we get bigger, we still retain that sense that Atlanta is the biggest small town you'll ever be in. And I say to people, Atlanta is just such a small community. I love it because I can affect change and I feel like my voice is being heard. And that is true for anyone starting out. We want to hear your voice. We're not going to say, oh, we're established and go away. Yeah. You know, we want to say, excellent, how can we help you? What connections do we have? I mean, I'm getting chills just thinking about the connections already in this room.
Yes, I will say that, you know, it's not just anecdotal. I had True Colors help me pull some data before this event. And we have a ways to go, but I will say that when I had them pull data on programming by the professional theaters across town, we found that between 2019-2020 season versus 2020-2021 season, the number of playwrights of color's work being done has doubled. So that we still have a ways to go because it was abysmal, right, before. But we are seeing more plays by women, more plays by people of color, and so we'll be, to me, in a decent place. We'll be in a decent place when the numbers quadruple. We'll be in an ideal place when we're looking at merit and not having to put people in the boxes where we think they belong at all. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out and joining us for this conversation this evening. Please give a round of applause to these awesome panelists. And I just want to encourage each and every person here today to please continue to stay plugged in. You know, I'm going to sound like a preacher. Say hey to your neighbor if you don't know. You know, say hey neighbor. And you know, put your whatever resources you have, whether they be financial or whether you got just time or whether you got creative ideas. Everybody has something to give to make our communities better. And so find the ways in which you can use your talents to make our city and our art scene and our theater scene be what you want it to be, for not just for yourself, but for future generations to come. So thank you all so much. Please get home safely.